The stars above Earth looked different that night. People across the world stopped and stared at the sky, pointing at the 12 new lights that appeared beyond the moon. They were too bright to be stars, too still to be meteors. Within hours, every telescope on the planet turned toward them, and humanity learned a terrible truth. They were not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors were not friendly. Commander Vokrin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, and looked down at the blue planet below. His scaled fingers moved across the holographic display, pulling up data about Earth. The planet had 7 billion inhabitants divided into nearly 200 separate nations. They still fought wars among themselves using primitive explosives and metal projectiles. They had achieved basic spaceflight but had never ventured beyond their own moon in any meaningful way. "This will be easy," Vokrin said to his second officer Kelthar. 3 days at most. Perhaps less. Kelthar nodded his large head in agreement. "Their weapons cannot reach us here. Their aircraft cannot leave their atmosphere for more than brief moments. They have no shields, no energy weapons, no unified command structure. World 848 will fall like all the others." The Velkhari Empire had conquered 847 worlds over 5 centuries. Each time the pattern was the same. Arrive, demand surrender, demonstrate overwhelming power, accept submission. Some worlds fought back with everything they had. It never mattered. The Velkhari had perfected the art of conquest. They had weapons that could burn continents, shields that could deflect nuclear weapons, and soldiers who had never known defeat. On Earth, Admiral Jinwoo Park watched the alien ships through the massive screens in the command center beneath Seoul. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many wars. But those wars had all been against other humans. This was different. This was something humanity had feared and dreamed about for centuries. "How long until they contact us?" he asked. Dr. Hana Choi looked up from her computer station. She was younger than the Admiral, only 38, but her expertise in languages and communication had made her invaluable. "Their transmission is coming through now. I'm decoding it." The room fell silent as everyone waited. Hana's fingers flew across her keyboard, running the alien signal through every translation program and pattern recognition software they had. Finally, the message appeared on the main screen in Korean, English, Mandarin, Spanish, and a dozen other languages simultaneously. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Velkhari Empire. You will surrender all military forces within 24 hours. You will accept our governance. You will provide resources and labor as required. Resistance is futile. Compliance ensures survival. You have 24 hours to respond." The command center erupted in shocked voices. Some people shouted in anger. Others looked terrified. Admiral Park raised his hand and silence returned. "Get me the Global Council," he said quietly. "All of them. Now." Within 2 hours, every world leader sat in an emergency virtual meeting. The debate was fierce and desperate. Some nations wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. Most simply didn't know what to do. President Nari Kim of the Korean Federation stood up and spoke clearly. "We have a plan," she said. "It's risky. It might fail. But it's better than slavery." She nodded to Admiral Park, who brought up classified files on everyone's screens. The words Project Sentinel appeared at the top. 30 years ago, we detected strange signals from deep space, Park explained. They were brief, encrypted, and clearly artificial. We knew then that we might not be alone. Some nations chose to ignore this. Others chose to prepare. Project Sentinel is the result of 3 decades of secret work. The Admiral showed images of hidden facilities built into mountains, underwater, and even on the dark side of the moon. Weapons unlike anything the public knew existed. Ships constructed in secret orbital yards, defense grids powered by experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of physics. "We're not as helpless as they think," Park continued. "We've been ready for this day. Not perfectly ready, but ready enough. Ready enough to fight an empire that has conquered 847 worlds?" the president of Brazil asked skeptically. "Ready enough to make them regret choosing Earth as number 848, Park replied. The vote took 3 hours. Every minute that passed brought them closer to the deadline. Finally, the decision was made. Earth would not surrender. They would send a response, but not the one the Velkhari expected. Hana worked with her team to craft the message. It needed to be clear and translated perfectly into the Velkhari language. When it was ready, she looked at Admiral Park for confirmation. He nodded. The message was broadcast on every frequency in every human language and in the Velkari tongue. One simple word repeated across all channels: no. On the Dominion, Commander Vakrin received Earth's response and laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound. They refuse. These primitives actually refuse. Should we begin bombardment? Kelthar asked. Not yet, Vakrin replied. First, we teach them what refusal costs. Target one of their major cities. Coastal location. High population. We'll remove it from existence, and then they'll beg to surrender. He studied the map of Earth and pointed to a city called Jakarta. 12 million people lived there, crowded along the coastline. It would make an excellent example. Send 3 strike craft, level the city completely, leave nothing standing, let the rest of the planet watch and learn. The 3 Velkari strike craft launched from the Dominion and entered Earth's atmosphere. They descended like burning meteors, their shields glowing as they cut through the air toward Jakarta. Inside the craft, Velkari pilots checked their weapons systems. Each craft carried enough firepower to turn the city into molten glass. But as they crossed into the airspace above Indonesia, something strange happened. The craft's instruments began to fail. Power fluctuations appeared across all systems. The pilots tried to compensate, but their controls stopped responding. Below them, hidden throughout Jakarta and every other major city on Earth, massive generators activated. They had been built into the foundations of buildings, disguised as ordinary infrastructure. Now they unleashed a coordinated electromagnetic pulse unlike anything the Velkari had encountered. The strike craft's shields collapsed, their engines died, their weapons systems went dark. 3 alien vessels, each capable of destroying a city, fell from the sky as nothing more than metal coffins. They crashed into the ocean with enormous splashes, sending waves across the coastline but harming no one. In the command center, Admiral Park allowed himself a small smile. A Phase 1 successful. Now comes the hard part. Commander Vakrin stared at his display in shock. 3 craft gone, just gone. Fallen from the sky like stones. His science officer was shouting about impossible energy readings from the planet's surface. His tactical officer was demanding new orders. How? Vakrin whispered. They shouldn't have this technology. They shouldn't even understand the principles behind it. But understanding didn't matter now. What mattered was that Earth had just revealed its teeth, and those teeth were sharper than anyone expected. Above the moon, 4 ships emerged from hidden bases carved into lunar craters. They were smaller than Velkari vessels, sleeker and faster. Their hulls bore the symbols of Earth's united forces. The lead ship was called Defiance, and its captain was a man named Minho Song. All ships, this is Defiance. Minho's voice came through the communications channel. We've trained for this our entire lives. Today we show them what humanity can do. Today we fight for our world. The 4 Earth ships accelerated toward the Velkari fleet and the battle for Earth began. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had always been empty and quiet. Millions of rocks floating in the darkness, orbiting the sun in endless patterns that never changed. But now something was different. Now humans were hiding there. Captain Minho Song stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching his tactical display. His ship was tucked behind a massive asteroid, its power systems running at minimum to avoid detection. Around him, his crew worked in silence, communicating through hand signals and text messages instead of speaking aloud. Even the smallest sound might be picked up by Velkari sensors. Contact, his sensor officer whispered. Velkari supply ship heading toward their main fleet. No escort, Minho studied the display. The supply ship was alone, confident in its safety this far from Earth. The Velkari didn't expect humans to be this far out in space. That was their mistake. Ready all weapons, Minho ordered quietly. Prepare for quantum jump. The Defiance had been upgraded with new technology based on captured Velkari equipment. Dr. Sungho Lim, a physicist everyone thought was crazy, had figured out how to make short-range jumps through space. The jumps only worked for a few thousand kilometers and used enormous amounts of power, but they allowed the ship to appear suddenly where enemies didn't expect. Jump in. 3, 2, 1. Now. The Defiance vanished from behind the asteroid and reappeared directly beside the Velkari supply ship. The alien vessel's crew barely had time to realize what happened before plasma lances tore through their engines and weapons. The supply ship went dark, drifting helplessly. Send the boarding team, Minho commanded. 20 soldiers in armored suits launched from the Defiance and attached to the Valkyrie ship's hull. They cut through the metal and entered the vessel, moving quickly through corridors filled with shocked alien crew members. The boarding team's leader, Lieutenant Ji-Hun Nam, spoke through his helmet radio. "We have control of the ship. Minimal resistance. They weren't expecting us." "Secure all supplies and data cores," Minho replied. "We have 10 minutes before their fleet knows something is wrong." The soldiers worked fast, moving crates of supplies and equipment into the Defiance's cargo bay. More importantly, they downloaded everything from the ship's computer systems. Every file, every communication, every piece of information about Valkyrie operations. "What about the crew?" Ji-Hun asked. "Put them in escape pods and give them enough power to reach their fleet," Minho said, "and give them a message to deliver." 9 minutes later, the Defiance made another quantum jump, disappearing back into the asteroid field. Behind them, the stripped supply ship drifted empty, and small escape pods carrying the Valkyrie crew headed toward the alien fleet. Each pod carried the same message from Captain Song. "Leave our solar system or watch your supplies disappear one by one." This was the 6th supply ship Earth forces had captured in 2 weeks. Commander Vakrin was furious. "How are they doing this?" he shouted at Kelthar. "We have sensors. We have patrols. How do they keep appearing and vanishing like ghosts?" "They're using some form of short-range jump technology," Kelthar explained, his voice tense. "We don't know how. It shouldn't be possible with their level of technology, but they're doing it anyway." Vakrin slammed his fist on the command console. "We're running low on supplies. Our ships need fuel and repair materials. If these raids continue, we'll have to retreat before our reinforcements even arrive." On Earth, the captured supplies were being distributed to the remaining ships and defensive installations. But more valuable than the supplies was the information. Dr. Hana Choi and her team had been working day and night, translating the Valkyrie communications and files. "I found something important," Hana announced during a briefing with Admiral Park. "The Valkyrie military structure is very rigid. Every decision must be approved by officers above. Regular soldiers never think for themselves. They just follow orders." "How does that help us?" Park asked. "It means if we can confuse their command structure, the regular soldiers won't know what to do. They're not trained to adapt or make independent decisions. They'll wait for orders that might never come." Park considered this information carefully. "What about their morale?" Hana pulled up translated messages between Valkyrie soldiers. "It's breaking down. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they're being hunted in space. Their supplies are disappearing and they don't understand how we're doing any of it. Many of them are questioning whether Earth is worth the cost." This was exactly what Park wanted to hear. Earth couldn't win a direct war against the Valkyrie Empire, but they could make the Empire regret choosing Earth as a target. They could make this conquest so difficult, so costly, that the Valkyrie would decide to leave rather than keep fighting. Lieutenant Jisoo Park had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of her life. She sat in a captured Valkyrie scout ship, modified to hide her human life signs from scanners. Her mission was to get close to the Valkyrie fleet, plant monitoring devices on their communication arrays, and escape before anyone noticed. "Remember," Admiral Park told her before she left, "if they catch you, they'll torture you for information about Earth's defenses. You have a suicide option in your suit if capture becomes unavoidable." Jisoo nodded. She understood the risks. Her entire family had died in Jakarta when the Valkyrie first attacked. 12 million people gone in an instant because aliens wanted to make an example. If she had to die to hurt them back, she considered it a fair trade. The scout ship drifted toward the Valkyrie fleet, pretending to be a damaged vessel returning from patrol. The aliens didn't question it. Why would they? It was one of their own ships, broadcasting the correct identification codes. Jisoo piloted the craft close to the Dominion, the massive flagship that led the enemy fleet. Her hands shook as she deployed tiny monitoring devices, each no bigger than a coin. They attached to the ship's hull magnetically, nearly invisible among the complex alien architecture. "Devices planted," she whispered into her radio, beginning withdrawal. But as she turned the scout ship away, an alarm blared. Someone had noticed something wrong. Maybe the ship's course was slightly off. Maybe the identification codes had a tiny error. It didn't matter. She had been detected. "This is Valkyrie security to unidentified scout vessel," a voice said in the alien language. Return to docking bay immediately for inspection. Jisoo's finger hovered over the button that would activate her suit's suicide protocol. Then she looked at her controls and smiled. The Valkyrie had taught Earth one very important lesson. When you're about to lose, make sure it costs your enemy dearly. She activated the scout ship's self-destruct and launched herself into space in an emergency escape pod. The scout ship exploded, damaging the Dominion's communication array, exactly where she had planted the monitoring devices. The escape pod's tiny thrusters fired, sending Jisoo tumbling away from the Valkyrie fleet. She had enough oxygen for 6 hours. If Earth's rescue ship didn't find her in that time, she would die. But she had completed her mission. Commander Vakrin watched the explosion on his ship's hull and felt rage building inside him. These humans refused to fight properly. They struck from shadows, disappeared before retaliation, and seemed to have no fear of death. This was nothing like the previous 847 conquests. "Sir, our communication array is damaged," a technician reported. "We can still send and receive messages, but there's something else. Small devices attached to the hull. We're being monitored. Remove them immediately," Vakrin ordered. "We're trying, sir, but they're integrated into the damaged sections. If we remove them carelessly, we might lose more systems." Vakrin realized what had happened. The human who crashed that ship had done it on purpose, disguising spy devices as battle damage. Now Earth would hear everything the Valkyrie fleet discussed until the repairs were completed. "How long to fix it?" he asked. 72 hours minimum, sir, 3 days. 3 days of Earth listening to every order, every report, every communication. Vakrin had to assume humans now knew everything about his fleet's status, supply situation, and battle readiness. He made a decision he never thought he would make. "Prepare to pull the fleet back to Jupiter's orbit. We'll establish a defensive position there and wait for reinforcements. Earth has made this system too dangerous for us to operate freely." Back on Earth, in an underground command center, Admiral Park listened to the intercepted Valkyrie communications. Dr. Hana Choi translated in real time, her face showing surprise and satisfaction. "They're retreating," she said. "Not leaving the solar system, but moving away from Earth. They're afraid to stay close." "And Jisoo?" Park asked. "The Resilience found her 40 minutes ago, low on oxygen but alive. She's being called a hero." Park allowed himself a small smile. Earth had just won something more valuable than any battle. They had won fear. The mighty Valkyrie Empire, conquerors of hundreds of worlds, was now afraid to come too close to humanity's home planet. But Park knew this was temporary. Reinforcements were coming, a much larger fleet than the one currently fleeing to Jupiter. When that fleet arrived, guerrilla tactics wouldn't be enough. Earth would need to fight one final desperate battle, and they would need a miracle to survive it. "How long until the reinforcement fleet arrives?" Park asked. "Our estimates say 12 days, Hana replied. 12 days to prepare." The space between Earth and Jupiter had never seen anything like this. 35 Valkyrie warships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. They moved with the confidence of an empire that had never lost. Admiral Sareth sat on his command throne, watching Earth grow larger on his displays. "The humans will surrender when they see our full strength," he told his officers. "This will be over before it begins." He was wrong. Captain Minho Song watched the enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. The Defiance floated in the shadow of Earth's moon, its power systems running quiet. Around him, his crew prepared for what would likely be their last battle. Everyone had written their final messages home. Everyone had said their goodbyes. "All ships report ready," his communication officer announced. Minho took a deep breath. Operation Hydra was about to begin. "For Earth," he said quietly. Then louder, "All ships, execute!" The Defiance's engines roared to life, and the ship shot forward at maximum acceleration. Behind him, the Resilience and Phoenix emerged from their hiding spots. 12 smaller fighter craft launched from lunar bases. And far below, rising from Earth's oceans, the Leviathan began its impossible journey toward space. The Valkyrie fleet detected them immediately. 35 ships against 3 capital vessels and a handful of fighters. Admiral Sareth laughed. "They're attacking us? With this?" He shook his head. "Destroy them all. Show no mercy." The Valkyrie fleet opened fire. The sky filled with energy beams and missiles. The first volley should have wiped out the human ships instantly, but the human ships weren't there anymore. The Defiance made its first quantum jump, vanishing and reappearing behind the Valkyrie formation. The Resilience split into a course that seemed suicidal, heading directly into the thickest cluster of enemy ships. The Phoenix dove toward Jupiter's massive gravity well, using the planet's pull to build impossible speed. "They're using jump technology," Admiral Sareth's tactical officer reported. "Short range, unpredictable. We can't target them effectively." "Then saturate the area with fire," Sareth ordered. "They can't dodge if we're shooting everywhere." But the human ships moved like nothing the Valkyrie had ever fought. They used gravity, momentum, and their smaller size to slip between volleys that should have destroyed them. The Defiance fired its plasma lances and a Valkyrie destroyer's shields collapsed. The Resilience launched quantum torpedoes that appeared inside enemy ships, tearing them apart from within. "This is Defiance to all fighters," Minho broadcast. "Execute Pattern Sigma. Make every shot count." Captain Jisoo Park led the fighter squadron in a coordinated strike against the Valkyrie battlecruiser's weapon arrays. Her pilots flew in patterns that seemed random, but were carefully calculated. They danced between enemy fire, their smaller craft nearly impossible to hit with weapons designed for large ship combat. "Target their sensor clusters," Jisoo ordered. "Blind them." Her squadron fired missiles at the battlecruiser's sensor arrays. Explosions rippled across the massive ship's hull. The battlecruiser could still fight, but now it couldn't see as well. Its targeting system struggled. Its point defense failed. Deep beneath the battle, something else was happening. Commander Minji-an piloted the Leviathan through Jupiter's upper atmosphere, using the dense gases to hide from sensors. The experimental ship strained against forces that should have crushed it, but the hull held. She emerged on the far side of Jupiter, invisible to the Valkyrie fleet focused on the battle near Earth. "All systems green," her engineer reported. "Beginning approach on the flagship." The Leviathan was designed for one mission: get close enough to the enemy command ship to use its singularity cannon. This weapon could create a tiny black hole, lasting only microseconds but powerful enough to tear through any defense. But it required being dangerously close, and it could only fire once before the cannon destroyed itself. "Distance to target?" Minji asked. 40,000 kilometers and closing. "They haven't detected us yet." Back at the main battle, things were getting desperate. The Phoenix had taken heavy damage. Smoke poured from breaches in its hull. Colonel Yuna Bay, commanding the Resilience, was fighting 3 Valkyrie ships at once. The Defiance had used 4 of its 5 quantum jumps. One more and the drive would destroy itself. "Defiance, this is Phoenix," a strained voice called over the radio. "We're losing power. Life support failing. We can't stay in the fight much longer." Minho closed his eyes briefly. The Phoenix was dying, and there was nothing he could do to save it. "Phoenix, can you make one more attack run?" "Affirmative." "One more. Then make it count. Target the lead battlecruiser. Everything you have." The Phoenix, trailing atmosphere and debris, turned toward the largest Valkyrie ship. Its weapons fired continuously, draining the last of its power. Missiles, plasma lances, kinetic projectiles, everything launched at once. The battlecruiser's shields took the hits, flickered but held. Then the Phoenix itself became the weapon. Commander Taewon Jang, knowing his ship was already lost, aimed for the battlecruiser's engines and accelerated. His crew had already evacuated in escape pods. He was alone on the bridge. "For Earth," Taewon said calmly, and the Phoenix crashed into the battlecruiser at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a new star. The battlecruiser, its shields weakened by the assault, took catastrophic damage. Its engines exploded. Its hull split open. Inside, thousands of Valkyrie crew members died instantly. "Phoenix is gone," the communication officer reported, his voice breaking. Commander Taewon died with his ship. Minho felt grief threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down. "Mourn later. Fight now. All ships, the Phoenix gave us an opening. Press the attack." The Leviathan reached its firing position, directly behind the Valkyrie flagship Dominion. Commander Minji-an targeted the ship's main reactor section. This was the moment everything had been building toward. "Singularity cannon charging," her weapons officer announced. 30 seconds to full power, but the Dominion sensors finally detected the strange ship behind them. Alarms blared. Admiral Sareth spun around in his command throne. "What is that vessel? Where did it come from?" "Unknown design, sir." "It's powering up some kind of weapon. Energy readings are off the scale. Destroy it. All rear weapons fire." The Dominion's rear batteries opened fire on the Leviathan. Energy beams struck the smaller ship's shields, draining them rapidly. The Leviathan shook violently. Shields failing, Minji's engineer shouted. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 6. Keep charging the cannon, Minji ordered, gripping her command chair. We only need 10 more seconds. The Dominion fired again. This time the beams punched through the Leviathan's depleted shields and tore into the hull. Explosions rippled through the ship. People died at their stations. Cannon at 95%. The weapons officer gasped, blood running down his face. Close enough. Fire now or lose it! Fire! Minji screamed. The singularity cannon unleashed its terrible power. A pinpoint of absolute darkness appeared just in front of the Dominion, a tiny black hole that lasted less than a second. But in that moment it consumed everything near it. Space itself bent and twisted. The Dominion's shields meant nothing against a force that warped reality. The black hole tore a massive hole through the flagship, gutting it from stern to bow. The Dominion's reactor exploded. The ship broke into pieces, taking Admiral Sareth and most of his crew into death. But the singularity cannon's recoil tore the Leviathan apart. The ship disintegrated in a cascade of explosions. Commander Minjian had just enough time to hit the emergency beacon before the bridge collapsed around her. She died knowing she had accomplished her mission. On Earth, Admiral Park watched 2 friendly icons disappear from his tactical display. The Phoenix. The Leviathan. Hundreds of people gone in moments. But the Velkari flagship was gone too, and without its command, the alien fleet fell into chaos. This is defiance to all Velkari ships, Minho broadcast on all frequencies. Your commander is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. You can keep fighting and die, or you can leave and live. Choose now. Dr. Hana Choi, standing beside Admiral Park, translated the Velkari responses in real time. The alien ships were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to continue fighting. Others wanted revenge for their losses. But many just wanted to go home. Commander Vokrin, now the ranking Velkari officer after Sareth's death, made a decision that would haunt him forever. All ships, this is Vokrin. We're withdrawing. Retreat to the outer system. Disengage from combat. Sir, we can still win, one of his officers protested. Look at our losses, Vokrin shouted. 5 ships destroyed, 8 damaged, and the humans are still fighting. These are not primitives. These are warriors, and we underestimated them. Again, I will not throw away more lives for pride. The Velkari fleet began to retreat. The remaining human ships were too damaged to pursue. The battle was over. Earth had won. In the command center, Admiral Park allowed himself to collapse into a chair. Around him, people were crying, cheering, or just staring in shock. They had done the impossible. They had defeated an empire. What are the Velkari saying now? Park asked Hana. She listened to the intercepted communications, tears running down her face. They're calling Earth the world that fights back. They're warning their homeworld that humanity is dangerous. They're saying we should never have been attacked. Captain Minho Song gripped the armrests of his command chair as the Defiance accelerated toward the Velkari fleet. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice remained steady. He had trained for 15 years for this moment, running simulations based on every scrap of data they could gather about alien technology. But simulations were one thing. Real combat was entirely different. Distance to enemy fleet? He asked. 200,000 kilometers in closing, his navigation officer replied. They're detecting us now. On the Dominion's bridge, Commander Vokrin watched 4 small blips appear on his tactical display. Human ships. Actual human ships in space, approaching his fleet with what looked like aggressive intent. It was almost amusing. 4 vessels, Kelthar reported, each approximately 1/5 the size of our destroyers. Minimal weapon signatures. They appear to be using some form of fusion drive, primitive but functional. Destroy them, Vokrin ordered. Make it quick. 2 Velkari destroyers moved to intercept the Earth ships. Their weapons charged, energy building and massive cannons that could punch holes through solid rock from orbit. The destroyers opened fire, sending brilliant beams of concentrated energy across the void. But the Earth ships weren't where the beams went. They had already moved, using sudden bursts of acceleration that would have crushed normal crews under the G-forces. The human ships had something the Velkari didn't expect: internal gravity compensation that allowed impossible maneuvers. They're faster than they should be, Kelthar said, surprise creeping into his voice. Minho smiled grimly. All ships execute pattern delta. Show them what Earth engineering can do. The 4 human ships split into 2 pairs, moving in coordinated patterns that confused the Velkari targeting systems. The Resilience and Valiant went high, using the moon's gravity to slingshot themselves at incredible speeds. The Defiance and Phoenix went low, skimming dangerously close to Earth's atmosphere before arcing back up. Colonel Yuna Bay commanded the Resilience. She was 45 years old and had spent her entire military career preparing for this fight. Her ship carried the newest weapon in humanity's arsenal, designed by Dr. Yoonji Han after years of theoretical work. It was called a plasma lance, and it had never been tested in actual combat. Target lock on the nearest destroyer, her weapons officer announced. Fire, Yuna commanded. The plasma lance activated, sending a focused beam of superheated matter toward the Velkari destroyer. But this wasn't a simple energy weapon. As it hit the destroyer's shields, the plasma didn't just impact and dissipate. It began to consume the shield energy itself, feeding on it, growing stronger as it burned through the defensive barriers. Alarms blared across the Velkari destroyer as its shields collapsed in a cascade failure. The plasma lance punched through the hull, melting metal and igniting internal systems. Explosions rippled through the alien ship as crew members scrambled to escape. Impossible, Vokrin whispered, watching one of his destroyers die. That weapon signature is not in any of our databases. They invented something new. The battle continued for hours. The Earth ships were outnumbered 12-4, but they refused to fight the way the Velkari expected. They used hit-and-run tactics, appearing from unexpected angles, firing and then disappearing behind lunar formations or into the shadow of larger Velkari ships. The Phoenix, under Commander Taewon Jang, used experimental quantum torpedoes. These missiles didn't travel through normal space. Instead, they made tiny jumps, appearing past enemy shields and detonating inside the target vessels. The technology was unstable and dangerous, but it worked. A second Velkari destroyer exploded from the inside, torn apart by quantum torpedoes that bypassed every defense it had. A third destroyer took heavy damage and began to list, losing power and drifting. In the command bunker beneath Seoul, Dr. Hana Choi monitored the battle through data feeds. She wasn't a soldier, but she felt every hit the Earth ships took, every close call that could have ended in disaster. Next to her, Dr. Yoonji Han watched her plasma lance design prove itself in combat. But the look on Yoonji's face wasn't pride. It was horror at the destruction her creation caused. "The Valiant is taking heavy fire," someone shouted in the command. Center Admiral Park watched as the Valiant's shields failed under concentrated bombardment from 3 Velkari ships. The human vessel tried to retreat, but enemy fire tore into its hull. Explosions erupted along its side. The ship spun out of control. "Valiant is lost," a tactical officer reported quietly. All hands. 400 people had crewed the Valiant. 400 men and women who would never go home. Park felt each loss like a physical blow, but he couldn't let emotion show. Not now. "Order the remaining ships to fall back to position Beta," he commanded. "They've done enough for now." Minho received the order and felt relief mixed with guilt. Relief that they would escape this battle alive. Guilt that the Valiant wouldn't. His ship was damaged but functional. The Resilience had taken moderate hits but was still fighting. The Phoenix was hurt badly, trailing atmosphere from a dozen breaches. "All ships were pulling back," Minho announced. "Remember the Valiant? Remember what we're fighting for." The 3 surviving Earth ships retreated toward the moon, using its mass to shield them from Velkari fire. The alien fleet didn't pursue. They had taken losses they never anticipated and needed to regroup. Commander Vokrin looked at the tactical summary and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Doubt. 3 destroyers destroyed or disabled, 1 Earth ship destroyed, but 3 survived and retreated in good order. The battle was technically a Velkari victory, but it didn't feel like one. "Send a priority message to the High Council," Vokrin ordered. "Request reinforcements." "Full battle fleet," Kelthar hesitated. "Sir, requesting reinforcements will be seen as weakness. The Council will question your command." "I don't care," Vokrin snapped. "These humans are not what we expected. They have weapons we've never seen. They fight with tactics we've never encountered. If we underestimate them again, we'll lose more than a few destroyers." The message was sent through quantum channels that crossed space faster than light. It would reach Velkara Prime in hours. The response would take days. Until then, Vokrin's fleet would remain defensive, staying beyond the moon where the human ships couldn't easily reach them. On Earth, people watched the battle through long-range cameras and listened to radio transmissions. When news spread that 3 Valkyrie ships had been destroyed and the enemy fleet forced to retreat, celebrations erupted in cities around the world. People danced in the streets crying with joy and relief, but in the command center there was no celebration. Admiral Park called his senior staff together for a brutal assessment of their situation. Chief Engineer Dae-hyun Ko delivered his report first. The planetary defense grid used 36% of its power reserves, stopping those 3 strike craft. We need at least a week to recharge fully, maybe 2. If they attack Earth directly again before then, we can't stop them. The ships? Park asked. Defiance is at 70% operational capacity. Resilience is at 65%. Phoenix is at 40% and needs extensive repairs before she can fight again. We've lost the Valiant entirely. Dae-hyun paused, his voice heavy. Sir, we don't have the resources for another battle like that one. Not yet. Park turned to Hana. What are the Valkyrie saying to each other? They're confused, Hana replied. Their communications show disbelief and anger. They're calling us clever but primitive, dangerous but ultimately doomed. They've requested reinforcements from their homeworld. How long until those reinforcements arrive? 3 to 4 weeks at their faster-than-light speeds. Park nodded slowly. So we have 3 weeks to prepare for a larger battle. 3 weeks to repair ships, recharge defenses, and somehow find a way to fight off an even bigger fleet than the one we barely survived. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the odds. Earth had won the first round by surprise and determination. But the Valkyrie Empire had resources humanity couldn't match. More ships, more weapons, more soldiers. And now they knew Earth could fight back. They would come prepared. We need a new strategy, Park finally said. We can't win a straight fight against their reinforced fleet. So we won't fight straight. We'll fight the way humans have always fought when facing superior enemies. We'll be unpredictable. We'll be everywhere and nowhere. We'll make them afraid of the dark. A young lieutenant named Jisoo Park raised her hand. She had survived the battle as a fighter pilot, destroying 2 enemy fighters herself. Sir, with respect, how do you make an empire that's conquered 847 worlds afraid of anything? Admiral Park looked at her and smiled coldly. We show them something they've never seen before. We show them what happens when you attack humanity's home. 12 days to repair ships, recharge weapons, and somehow find a way to defeat an enemy. The underground facility beneath the Pacific Ocean had been built in secret over 20 years. Now it buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. Dr. Yoon-ji Han stood in front of a massive viewport, watching as a strange vessel took shape in the construction bay outside. The water pressure at this depth would crush a normal person instantly, but the facility's walls were stronger than steel. It looks like something from a nightmare, said Dr. Sung-ho Lim, walking up beside her. Yoon-ji nodded. That's the point. The Valkyrie need to fear us, and fear comes from the unknown. The vessel was called Leviathan. It was designed to operate both underwater and in space, something no ship had ever done before. Its hull was covered in strange patterns that disrupted sensor readings. Its weapons were unlike anything Earth had built before, and it was nearly ready. How much time do we have? Yoon-ji asked. 10 days until the Valkyrie reinforcements arrive, Sung-ho replied. Maybe less if they travel faster than expected. 10 days. Earth had already achieved the impossible just by surviving this long, but now they needed another miracle. Yoon-ji thought about all the people depending on them. Every human on the planet was trusting scientists like her to save them from an empire that spanned the galaxy. In orbit above Earth, Captain Min-ho Song supervised repairs to the Defiance. Workers in spacesuits crawled across the ship's hull, replacing damaged plates and fixing weapon systems. His crew was exhausted, running on coffee and determination. They had fought battles, conducted raids, and barely escaped death dozens of times. Captain, we have a problem, his chief engineer said over the radio. The quantum jump drive is deteriorating. Every time we use it, it damages itself a little more. We've got maybe 5 jumps left before it tears the ship apart. Min-ho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. 5 jumps. In the coming battle, he would need more than that. But sometimes you worked with what you had. Make those 5 jumps count, he said. Install manual overrides on everything. If the computer systems fail, I want to be able to fly this ship using just my hands. On Earth's surface, President Nari Kim addressed the world. Billions of people watched as she stood before cameras, looking tired but determined. "The Velkari reinforcements will arrive soon," she said. "They will have more ships, more weapons, more soldiers than the fleet we've already fought. I won't lie to you. The odds are against us. But humanity has always faced impossible odds and survived. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're the ones who never give up." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Every person on Earth is now part of this fight. If you're a doctor, treat the wounded. If you're an engineer, build weapons. If you're a teacher, prepare the next generation for whatever comes next. And if you're a parent, hold your children close and show them that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what must be done despite the fear." General Hyunwoo Kang had a different approach than President Kim. He stood in a military briefing room, addressing his top commanders with harsh words. "We've been too soft," he said. "We captured Velkari soldiers and sent them back to their fleet. That's weakness. Every alien we release is one we might face again. I say we execute them and use the fear to break enemy morale." Admiral Park, attending the briefing, stood up. "That's not who we are. We're fighting to protect humanity, not to become monsters. We're fighting to win," Kang shot back. "And winners do what's necessary." The argument went back and forth, revealing a divide in Earth's leadership. Some believed mercy showed strength. Others believed only ruthless tactics would ensure survival. Eventually, Admiral Park's view prevailed. But Kang's angry face showed he wasn't finished with this debate. Dr. Hana Choi worked in a small room filled with computer screens, listening to intercepted Velkari communications. She had been translating alien messages for weeks now, and she was beginning to understand how the enemy thought. They valued order, hierarchy, and tradition. They believed in their own superiority, absolutely. That was their weakness. "Admiral, I have something," she called over the communication system. Park arrived within minutes. "What did you find?" "The Velkari soldiers are terrified of us," Hana explained, playing recordings. "Listen to this conversation between two crew members on one of their ships." The alien voices spoke in clicks and whistles, but Hana's translation appeared as text. The soldiers discussed how humans fought. They talked about ships appearing from nowhere, about weapons that shouldn't exist, about an enemy that seemed to have no fear of death. One soldier said he wished they had never come to Earth, another agreed. "Their morale is breaking," Park observed. "Yes, but there's more. They're also confused about how we're achieving all this. They think we might have secret allies among other alien species. They can't believe we developed this technology ourselves." Park smiled. "Good. Let them think we have friends out there. Fear and confusion are weapons too. Across the planet, ordinary people prepared in their own ways. Factories that once made cars now produced ammunition. Computer programmers who created video games now wrote targeting software for weapons. Students who should have been studying for exams instead trained in emergency medical procedures. Lieutenant Jisoo Park, now promoted to captain for her successful spy mission, trained new fighter pilots. These young men and women would fly in the coming battle, and many would die. She looked at their eager faces and felt sick inside. They were so young. Too young to die in space far from home. "The Velkari are better trained than you," she told them honestly. "They have better ships, better weapons, better experience. But they have one weakness you don't. They've never lost before. They don't know how to fight when things go wrong. You were born on a planet where things always go wrong. That's your advantage. When the battle turns chaotic, when nothing goes according to plan, you'll adapt. They won't." One pilot, a boy barely 20 years old, raised his hand. "Captain, what's it like? Facing them in combat?" Jisoo remembered her fight during the first battle. The fear, the adrenaline. The moment she almost died when a Velkari missile passed so close she could see it through her canopy. "It's terrifying," she said. "Anyone who tells you different is lying. You'll be scared. You'll want to run. But you'll remember why you're fighting. You'll remember everyone depending on you, and you'll find courage you didn't know you had." In the deep space beyond Jupiter, Commander Vokrin waited for his reinforcements. His fleet had moved far from Earth, establishing a defensive position where humans couldn't easily attack. But the raids continued. Supply ships vanished. Patrols disappeared. His soldiers grew more nervous each day. When the reinforcement fleet finally arrived, Vokrin felt relief wash over him. 23 additional warships, including 3 massive battlecruisers that dwarfed anything in his current fleet. Each battlecruiser could destroy a planet's surface on its own. Together, they represented unstoppable force, Admiral Sareth, commander of the reinforcement fleet, was not happy to see Vakrin. You requested support against a primitive world? The Council questions your competence. Vakrin bristled at the insult. These humans are not primitive. They have technology and tactics we've never encountered. They've destroyed 3 of my ships and captured 6 supply vessels. Sareth laughed. Then you're weaker than I thought. We will crush them in a day. Prepare to advance on Earth immediately. I recommend caution, Vakrin said. We should study their tactics, learn their weaknesses. Enough, Sareth interrupted. The Velkari Empire does not show caution to primitives. We advance tomorrow. Prepare your ships. On Earth, sensors detected the arrival of the Velkari reinforcements. The screens in the command center showed 35 enemy ships now gathering beyond Jupiter. The largest fleet ever assembled to conquer a single world. Admiral Park looked at the display and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This was it, the final battle. Win or lose, everything would be decided in the next few days. Contact all ships, he ordered. Contact all defensive installations. Operation Hydra begins in 24 hours. Operation Hydra was Earth's last desperate plan. It involved every ship, every weapon, every trick they had learned. It would require perfect timing, incredible luck, and sacrifice from people who knew they might not survive. But it was their only chance. Dr. Yoonji Han watched as the Leviathan was launched from the underwater facility, beginning its journey to the combat zone. Commander Minji An, formerly a submarine captain in the Korean Navy, now commanded this experimental vessel. Her orders were simple. Get close to the Velkari flagship and destroy it no matter the cost. Captain Minho Song said goodbye to his family through a video call. His wife tried to smile, but tears ran down her face. His daughter, only 6 years old, didn't understand why Daddy looked so sad. I'll come back, he promised, knowing it might be a lie. Be brave for me. All across Earth, similar goodbyes were happening. Soldiers hugging their parents. Engineers kissing their partners. Pilots recording final messages in case they didn't return. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone understood the stakes. As night fell over Seoul, Admiral Park stood on the surface for the first time in weeks. He looked up at the stars and thought about everything humanity had achieved.